Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Right, okay, we're not going to carry on with the episode of Scottish distilleries just yet, because I've still got a bit of a backlog of interesting stuff to kind of share with you guys. So today's tasting is no exception, really. We'll be looking at something completely and utterly brand new to the UK market. Swiss Whisky. Yeah. For those of you that know of Gaunt, at least you know that we've just started importing, well, I say just started, probably about a year ago now, we started importing from some Swiss wine, and very, very good it is too. Certainly we've discovered some of the top winemakers in Switzerland and brought that in. We're not, however, importing Swiss whisky. That is being brought in by a company called Highfern, who are the company that bring in and distribute Smogen, the Swedish whisky. So when I had given the opportunity to try something a little bit different, a little bit off the beaten path, shall we say, I'm always game for it. And so when Robert came to the shop the other week, he kindly brought me some samples, and well, this is what we're gonna look at. So anyway, the distillery is called Langatun, and it is, like I said, it's in Switzerland, in the town of Langenthal. I hope I pronounced that right. My German is not particularly brilliant. The distillery itself, the history of the distillery goes something like this: that in 1857, quite a while ago, a chap called Jacob Baumberger returned home from studying brewing, I believe, to his father's farm, and set up a distillery. As you do, you know, in the 1800s, he must have had a fair amount of money to be able to do that kind of thing. So he must have been a fairly successful farmer. 3 years after that, he took over a small brewery in the town of Langenthal, and successfully ran both the brewery and the distillery for a number of years. In 1877, he had the opportunity to purchase a spring that was in the hills above Langenthal, so he had access to sort of crisp spring water to distill with. After his death, apparently his son Hans took over the running of the business, and in 1907 founded a peat company, or founded a company to exploit peat for use in their whiskies. So I don't really have a great deal much more information, apart from obviously the distillery presumably carried on, probably quiet through during the First World War. Certainly you would imagine that sort of barley was fairly hard to come by, and after the Second World War as well. But anyway, now the distillery is up and running once again, with the third member of the Baumberger family, one Hans, who is at the controls, so to speak. So so there you have it. Like I said, I don't really know a huge amount about it. The website, unfortunately, is all in Swiss or German, possibly, which I can't exactly read. But they use a number of different cask types. They use port, sherry, wine. I believe it's double distillation, and they do a peated and a non-peated whiskey. I believe they also do, I think they do a rye, I think they do a vodka, I think they do a honey liqueur, and probably a few other weird and wonderful bits and pieces, as these kind of distilleries have a tendency to do. So that's pretty much about all the information I can give you about the distilleries. So let's introduce this afternoon's little lineup then, shall we? Okay, so what we have here is two bottlings. We have basically the bottling that is called Old Deer, That's Deer as in D-E-E-R, not as in D-E-A-R. This is unpeated spirit, matured in a combination of sherry and Chardonnay casks. Interesting. And obviously they do two expressions. They do a standard 40% bottling, and they do what they call a cask proof bottling. This particular one is 62.1%. I believe these were all distilled in May of 2010 and bottled in February of this year. So relatively young spirit, so could be interesting. The peated malt that they do is called Old Bear, as in, yeah, okay. And again, they do two bottlings of it. They do a cask strength bottling, which is bottled at 62.8%, and they do a 40% bottling. So, interesting thing about this is wholly matured in ex-red Chateauneuf de Pape casks. So, well, not particularly dark colour, but there you go. It is definitely aged in those casks, so could be interesting. So there you go. That's this afternoon's little lineup. So let's kick on and see what the Old Deer is like then. Okay, so let's see what the nose gives us then. Interesting. Plenty of coffee cherry. Quite herbal. Now, those of you that know the wines of Chateauneuf, of the Southern Rhone, Provençal wines, you'll know the term garrigue. Garrigue is kind of heathery kind of stuff that grows all over the place, and the flavours tend to come through in the wines, certainly in Provençal wines anyway. And this certainly has an element of that kind of scrubby land, that sort of heather, and not quite heather, but sort of that kind of style of herbal notes. Nice chunky sherry. Can't say I'm getting an awful lot of Chardonnay notes, but I guess you wouldn't expect it. The sherry is certainly forward. It's got that sort of slightly kind of almost Auchentoshan-y kind of boiled sweet character. There's some malt, there's some barley. Yeah, it's an interesting nose. It's pleasant. It's not spirity. It's got some softness to it. Yeah, some nice sweet sherry notes kind of coming through now. Palate. A little bit of tannin on the finish, but pleasant, rich, malty, some nice slightly treacly sherry notes. Again, plenty of the garrigue, scrubby, herbally kind of notes. Quite dry, but interesting. Yeah, really, really pleasant. If you like the kind of very herbally kind of whiskies, then this will certainly be up your street. And it's nice to see a European whiskey that's not 3 years old and just sort of like goes, yeah, that needed more time in the cask. So it's actually nice to see something that's been released that actually has a little bit of age to it. It's got a nice length. The sherry kind of lingers. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, really quite nice. Okay, so let's move on to the cask strength bottling then, shall we? Let's see what the nose gives us on this. More spirit character, more barley. It's more whiskey-like, I guess. Not as sweet, not as malty. Again, it's got a really nice, clean barley character. Slightly herbal again. Lovely intensity. Really, kind of grips you. It's not the most complex of whiskies, it has to be said, but you know, I think for what it is, it's really pleasant. It's got some lovely kind of aromatic, herbal, heathery, floral notes coming through. There's a little bit of sort of sherry wininess in the background, but it's certainly because the spirit character is more forward, which is you know, pushing it back a little bit. It's got some lovely crispness, some lovely barley, it has to be said. Palate? A lot more sherry on the palate. Rich treacle, malt, wood spice. Not quite so much of the barley character. Again, herbal finish, quite drying. Again, the alcohol, the wood notes. Lovely spiciness though. Wood spice and sort of a little bit of earth, but that's really clean. It's really malty. It's rich. It's dark. I can see, a number of you kind of liking this this particular whiskey. Anyway, let's put a little drop of water with it and see what happens to it, shall we? Still quite whiskey-like. The sherry notes are still sat in the background and not really come out. So you're still getting all that lovely barley. There's a little estery note now, possibly a little bit of citrus, a little bit of orange. Just a touch of coffee. Some malt. Yeah, I mean that's this. I'm really warm to this. This is really interesting, really nice. Again, sort of like it's got all that kind of herbal character, and I guess this is one of the nice things. Even though this has been matured in both wine casks and sherry casks, it kind of has. I'm not going to use the term terroir because I don't believe in, as we've said in the past, the whole terroir concept in whiskey. But it has a sense of place to it, and the big issue I have with a lot of whiskies from Europe and Australia and what have you is the fact that they've just been whacked into sherry casks. They're really young, they're intensely alcoholic, and they could come from anywhere, but this really does have a sense of place to it, and it's that kind of herbal, scrubby kind of character that, you know, just kind of just says, you know, Provençal France, but obviously this is not French. If you kind of get what I mean, don't you? Palate? Well, it hasn't diminished the sherry on the palate. It's softened it up, moved a little bit of the tannin, the wood spice. It's softer, it's treaclier, but again, it's still got that lovely herbal character. A little bit of sort of almost minerality on the finish now. A touch of citrus as well. Yeah, kind of almost herbal cough mixture, but not quite, if you see what I mean. You know, that sort of treacly and herbal character combined kind of gives you that impression, but there's no medicinal notes, there's no you know, camphor or things like that. It's all very Provençal, you know. Okay, so I'm now going to grin and bear it. Yeah, I know, that was dreadful. Anyway, let's see what the old bear gives us then, shall we? That's nice. I like this. This is lovely. Again, very subtly peated. You know, sweet, very sweet peat. Some lovely barley, some citrus. There's some winey red fruits just kind of sat in the background. I mean, for something that's spent its entire 6 years in a wine cask, it's surprisingly well balanced. There's a touch of marzipan, some almond, some vanilla. Oh, it's just lovely sweet peat. Really, really nice. Again, slightly herbal, that with that slightly scrubby character coming through, but that does seem to be sort of not quite so prevalent, I guess, on the nose. The winey notes are coming out a bit now, giving it a bit of time, a bit of aeration, and getting more of the sort of red cherry, currant kind of notes. There's a little bit of wood spice. You're getting almost a little bit of camphory kind of menthol sort of notes. It's obviously the way that the sort of, you know, that sort of herbal scrubbiness is kind of interacting with the wine cask. Palate. That has some lovely complexity to it. Soft, chocolatey, a little bit of winey red fruit, some soft sweet peat, some smoke. Again, a little bit of herbalness, a little bit of drying on the finish, but it's got some really lovely weighty barley and fruit to sort of like back it all up. I've tasted a damn sight worse. That's what I can say. I mean, this, you know, I mean, I'll get to that bit when we sum it up. I'm probably getting a bit ahead of myself, but that's really nice. Lovely vanilla aftertaste. Really, really lingering. That's good. Okay, so moving on to the cask strength version. Let's see what the nose gives us on that then, shall we? A little bit more wininess in actual fact. More intensity, more scrubby herbal character. Red currants, cherries, but still some barley and some lovely sweet smoke. More earthy, almost kind of dunnagey notes, but not quite. Lovely balance, just really, really well balanced, and I just love the intensity of the cask strength. It's just, it's a bit of almost hyacinth, possibly. Sort of slight. Now I'm getting some quite higher esters and some smoke, floral, not smoke, floral notes. Yeah, that's a lovely clean spirit. That's really nice. Touch of rose petal, possibly now. Really complex. Palate. Ooh, that's a bit dry. A lot more wininess on the palate. A lot more red fruit. A lot more wood spice. Almost kind of cinnamony kind of note. Almost cinnamon stick kind of note. Again, you know, pleasant amount of sweet, smoky peat. It's not a peat monster by any stretch of the imagination, but almost kind of saltiness. Vegetation, you know, rounded, lovely, absolutely gorgeous, really, really full. Even though it's cask strength, and yes, you can taste the alcohol gives it quite a nip on the finish. That is certainly rounded and really, really nice. So we will put a little drop of water with it and just see what happens. See what the nose does now. Very much like the 40% bottling in actual fact. Still crisp, clean. A bit of manure coming out now in actual fact. Is that, would that be a bear poo possibly? But there's still got a lovely sweetness to it. Barley. And that herbalness, yeah, really nice. little bit less intense on the peatiness. Still quite round, full, barleyed, bit sweeter possibly, a little bit more vanilla. Still quite herbal, edgy, bit of spice on the finish. You know what? That's pretty good. Yeah, I like it. Great. Okay, so let's sum this little tasting up. To be honest with you, this has actually kind of reinforced things. When I first tasted them, I was a little bit unsure of the Old Deer, the unpeated malt. It was, I don't know, just maybe it was just I was not kind of like getting it possibly. Certainly, you know, it had some really interesting characteristics, the herbalness, the not OTT sherry, but I just wasn't totally sure. But now I'm convinced. I think this is really good. I think both the 40% bottling and I think the cask strength bottling are really nice. They certainly have their pluses. You know, whichever one you go for. The Old Bear, I did like that. I liked that from the word go. I thought it was really good. Shade more complex than the Old Deer, but I'm guessing the sort of like the use of peat is probably giving it that little bit more complexity. And I suppose warmed to that a bit more than the sherry matured stuff. I like the fact that it's been aged entirely in ex-Chateauneuf de Pape casks, which is one of my favourite wines. And I like the fact that it's not a wine monster. It's not just completely swamped by the cask, which, like I said, I'm amazed that it isn't. But I'm guessing that it's probably been aged in barriques, which are quite large casks. I would imagine that they've probably been fairly well used. So I mean, you know, you're not getting a huge amount of oak vanillins and things like that, because that would have all been leached out by the wine over years, basically. But I'm guessing that, again, that they're probably not first fill wine casks. He may, obviously, at one point he probably used some first fill. Maybe it's vatted in. Who knows? But just the balance is really well. You know, really good. So yeah, I like them, and I'll probably stock them. And I can't remember how much I'm going to have to charge for them. Not without looking at the prices. They're not going to be cheap, but well. What is from Switzerland? I mean, Swiss wine is pretty bloody expensive, and getting it over here, I won't go into the red tape that you have to kind of go through to get Swiss wine over here, and the costs involved. So yeah, it's not going to be cheap. But I think, you know, if you've got the sort of the readies and you're into sort of something a little bit weird and wonderful, then you can do a lot worse and grab a bottle of these. So anyway. Like I said, I will certainly be stocking them in the not too distant future. So yeah, I'm sure Robert's going to be happy with me saying that. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the show. It's a bit of a shortish one, given that we've only got 4 samples. But anyway, all that's left to say is good dramming and good afternoon.